All right, good evening and welcome. It is 6:01 p.m. on November 8th, and I'd like to call to order the Keizer Planning Commission meeting. We are at the Keizer Civic Center, and Dawn has noted the attendance. We know that Commissioner Hutchins will not be here this evening, and we are waiting on the arrival of Commissioner Avishon and Commissioner Witters. With that, what I'd like to do is we're going to go ahead and sort of flip-flop the agenda just a little bit. I want to start with the council representative for November 20th, which is a Monday. Commissioner Hutchins won't be here, so is there anybody that would like to go? Commissioner Lopez, if you want to go and experience that, I'd be happy to do it, and you can come shadow it and kind of see how that whole process goes, or even do it yourself. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would love to come with.
Okay, so we'll have Commissioner Lopez do that on November 20th. And what you'll get in advance of that is a copy of the minutes from Dawn. And then you can just kind of hit the highlights typically. And you can always ask questions of myself or Shane on any particulars outside of that. Councilor Duran, what's going on in the city council world?
Good question.
You've been very busy recently.
I hadn't planned on saying anything yet, so I'm not sure what I was going to say.
Well, welcome to Keizer Planning Commission Improv, brought to you by delayed entrance into the meeting.
Yeah, thank you. I missed last planning commission, so I wanted to mention that was incorrect on
The minutes?
minutes.
Okay. We'll note that, and whoever makes the motion will just do as corrected on that.
But I'm drawing a blank. So.
Any good news that came out of last night for maybe the city of Keizer? It may not be necessarily related to the city council, but relates to the people of Keizer? Like in emergency services?
Oh, totally forgot. Yeah.
I mean, we're feeding the clock here a little bit.
It is a city
there,
council, but yes, it appears that the Keizer Fire Department levy passed, so that will be good. And for those of us in Keizer that do work in Salem, we didn't get to vote on this, but the people from Salem voted, and we do not at this point have to pay a payroll tax. So that's a benefit for those of us that do work in Salem.
That was very interesting. Yeah, so, I mean, not a lot on the ballots, but, people responded, and it is what it is. Anything else to add, Counselor? No. Shane or Dina, anything you guys want to talk about in terms of any sort of things that are on the horizon? Tell us wonderful stories.
Thank you, Chair Lawyer. Yeah, I can kill some time for you. That's what you're getting at. No, there actually are a few things, just to kind of let Planning Commission know. I believe it was last month that we talked a little bit. Did I give a presentation last month?
You did.
I'm losing my brain, I think. I'm forgetting things.
It was actually a really good presentation.
Yes.
I went back and rewatched it, and I thank the Planning Commission for allowing me to step out. I had it was a final thing for my daughter as a senior, and so I was able to step out, and Commissioner Hutchins took over the rest of that meeting. But I did finish watching it. It was a great presentation.
Well, good. Hopefully, it was helpful. So, as you know, we talked kind of about the whole world of CFAC rules and different things. Yeah. So we are. The process for the scenario planning work is kind of getting underway. We had kind of a kickoff meeting with staff and ODOT representation here last couple weeks. I had a meeting today actually with ODOT representation, which is specific about the transportation system plan update work that we'll be following kind of right along and in conjunction with that scenario planning work. Okay. So that was a good, just an informational meeting. They're working on getting together scopes of work, and ultimately there'll be a intergovernmental agreement that we move forward with. And obviously when we get into the heart of transportation system planning stuff, and it's a little ways out, I mean, that's a big process, but that's been going on. The other thing is just on the local, on the ground level. Obviously, we've seen lots of different development. Y'all are aware of it. I know that the Verda apartments that have been being built and landscaping is in. I know they've started actually calling for some final inspection approvals. Today, actually, I approved their informational sign that speaks to the Herbert Pugh Savage Farm that used to be on the site. That was one of the conditions of that comp plan zone change from 2016, that they provide an informational display. So they're going to do an informational display very similar to what we have at our story poles out front.
Right.
So it's a good sign. Actually, the Public Arts Commission, is that what it's called? Keizer?
Public Arts.
Thank you, Shannon. I know they came up with the design of the sign several years ago. But yeah, I just saw the final rendering of that. So that's going to be getting installed. And I know they've got some things that they need to work out with Fire District and Public Works, but I think that they will start getting some occupancy permits for some of those buildings fairly soon. So those apartments are going to start filling up. And then we've got a few other projects in town that are going up right now that I know there's been lots of questions and concerns about, but Trail Avenue Apartments have permits. I believe those are issued at least on 2 of the buildings. I think the third building was holding up, just not for any reason, but just on the applicant. And the River Road Apartments are moving along as well.
Great. We'll give it a couple more minutes. So Commissioner Avishon, welcome. We're just kind of reversing the agenda just here a little bit, waiting on Commissioner Witters before we get moving into the public hearing. And it's not on here, but I'd like to see if our youth liaison has anything to talk about tonight.
I apologize, I was kind of caught off guard. But yesterday, I'm a part of the orchestra program, and yesterday we hosted a Keizer Orchestra Area Festival. It was really exciting. There were 4th graders, there were middle school orchestras, and then our orchestra. Other than that, I don't really have any updates.
Great.
Sorry.
Well, thanks for allowing me to put you on the spot. I have 2 people, it appears, that signed up for appearance of interested citizens, and I just want to clarify, is anybody wanting to come and just do general public testimony, or is there a desire to talk about the public hearing? So, and I apologize, I'm having a hard time reading the writing here, but it looks like Jay Davria?
Probably shouldn't have signed that, just here, observe it.
Not a problem. And then looks like last name might be Prentice? Same thing. Okay, wonderful. Well, I just wanted to make sure if there was anything that you wanted to talk to us about that was outside the scope of the hearing, that you had the opportunity to do so. It sounds like that's not the case. All right. Well, I don't know what else we can talk about.
I have a question for you, Shane. So on the Verta Apartments, I noticed that it's, the last several weeks, they have now leasing signs on there. Is there a problem putting that on there before you have like final approval on the building?
Not from my perspective.
Okay.
I think leases are, Shannon could speak to it. Leases are a little different than like sales of property, right? I mean, but in this case, they may be taking reservations or something like that. The issue would be if people started moving in without occupancy, that would be a problem.
That would be a problem. Okay, thank you.
All right, City Attorney Johnson.
Chair, I was just going to note that if there's, you do have approval of minutes. It looks
right.
like was the only thing left on the agenda other than the hearing.
Yep.
So you can go to that. If Commissioner Withers isn't there at that time, I still would like to take a brief break
Yep,
to see
no
if
problem.
he has time to be there. For the reason is the audience is, I would hate Mr. Withers to drive quickly all the way down from Portland and then not be able to take part because he needs to be here for the entirety of the hearing in order to take part in the deliberation. So that would be the reason. So you have the approval of the minutes, and then we can go from there.
Okay, so our next item before our last item would be the consideration of the October 11th meeting minutes. And of note, Councilor Duran did state that he was not at that meeting, so the motion may include approve as amended unless there's any other changes or things that need to happen on the minutes. So that being said, can I get a motion on the minutes, please?
I move that we accept the minutes as presented with the correction of Commissioner Duran,
Okay. Is there a second?
Counselor Duran.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve as presented with the correction from Counselor Duran by Commissioner Grants and a second by Commissioner Lopez. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously with 2 absent. And with that being said, I would like to put the Planning Commission into recess at 6:11, and we'll check back in here in about 10 minutes unless Commissioner Withers otherwise shows up. Sound good? All right, we are at recess. Okay, we are calling this meeting back to order at 6:20. And for the record, I just want to state that we got a call from Commissioner Witters. He's still stuck in traffic. It sounds like he's on his way here and will still attend, but he's going to participate from the audience. And I appreciate Commissioner Witters touching bases with Dawn and getting that squared away so we can move this forward in the interest of the applicant and all those here this evening. And so with that, we will go to our normally scheduled item number 4, which is an order in the matter of the application of Michael Lee and Susie Lee for a petition of major variance on property located at 527 Dearborn Avenue, North Keizer, case number 2023-12, and I will open the public hearing at 6:21. City Attorney Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Lawyer. For those of you present and the Planning Commission, please pay attention to the following notice, which is required under state law. This is called a quasi-judicial hearing, it's a land use hearing, and this statement is required under statute. The applicable substantive criteria for this case is set forth in the staff report for both the partition and the variance, which is a two-part case. Is there any objection to waiving the reading of the actual notice, actual criteria? They're set forth in the staff report, and the decision, which is in the back. Is there any objection to actually having to read all those? Hearing no objection, we'll deem that to be waived. As I said, you can get a copy in the back that shows the different criteria. And again, this is a dual hearing, if you will, for a partition and a major variance. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria that is described in the staff report or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulations which you believe apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Planning Commission, the City Council, and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. For the applicant, the failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to that issue precludes an action in circuit court for damage on the conditions. For the Planning Commission, at this time, are there any declarations of conflict of interest, bias, or ex parte contacts?
Commissioner Burson.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I did drive by the property today. I didn't go onto the property. I took a street view of it. I don't know, sometime this afternoon.
Okay. And did you gain any knowledge specific to the criteria from that?
No, with me, it was trying to take the drawings and get a visual in my head. So
Okay.
I was able to get a 3D version of the drawings that are in the application.
Okay, very good. Is there any other declarations? Hearing no further declarations of conflict of interest, bias, or ex parte contacts, I'll go on. For all the participants in the audience, prior to the close of the hearing, if you have any, you need to state any objections to bias, conflicts of interest, ex parte contacts, jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter, or opportunity to be heard. The time set forth for the participants in terms of, we have a little limit timer here, is the applicant has a total of 15 minutes for all parties. So if they have, I don't know if the applicant is planning to testify or has other people testifying, the total for all people for the applicant is 15 minutes. Okay. Any other parties who wish to testify have 5 minutes per person. At the end, because the burden of proof is on the applicant has a 10-minute rebuttal period. I would caution folks to stay in that time period. We will be running the timer, and I would ask the Planning Commission to please hold your questions until the end of the testimony. So if you have a pen, you might want to jot down a question if one comes to you so you can ask after the time is up. Are there any questions? Do anybody in the audience have any questions on the procedure? Yes, sir.
I'm Michael Barker. Am I the applicant?
No, you're the appellant, sir. You're appealing the case. Yeah.
I need to point out also, I've never seen the criteria list.
So,
Probably should.
yeah, if I could, Mr. Wecker, let me repeat the question since you're not in the audience for the record. Mr. Wecker was asking about the criteria. The criteria were in the decision. And did Mr. Wecker get a copy of the actual decision?
I finally did get a copy. I've got 2 addresses. It took a while.
All right. So those
I haven't read it since
Okay, so Mr. Weckert is asking about the criteria. Those criteria are set forth in that. Do you have that with you? There's a copy in the back. And so you can look at that. There's several criteria for the partition, much fewer for the major variance. Are there any further questions from the audience? Okay, so yes.
When we want to make comment on the bias that was made or may not have.
You can testify at any time if you're listed, and if you're not listed, the chair will call for you. And so you can come up. You have a total of 5 minutes for all your comments. Are there any further questions?
There's a lot of material here, which are considered criteria. I don't see the word criteria.
Okay, I'll come show you, Mr. Weckert, in just a moment. At this time, and there's no,
I think city attorney has to.
yes, the applicant?
Yes, I'm Michael. Just a quick question. So if I have someone who wants to testify, do I have to sign up before?
No, you can be called, but yet that time frame is total for 15 minutes for both of you or any of you. If there's no further questions, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Witham for the staff report.
Thank you, City Attorney Johnson. Mr. Witham.
Thank you, Chair Lawyer, Planning Commissioners, audience members. I just want to say before we get started, I appreciate, sorry, my mic's a little janky. I really do appreciate all the audience members that are here in attendance tonight. It's pretty exciting for us in this body to see a room with people that are engaged and wanting to be a part of the process. So thank you for coming and being here. Okay, so tonight, as you've stated and Mr. Johnson stated, we have a hearing on an appeal of the partition major variance case 2023-12. The application, the staff decision was issued on September 18th, 2023, approving the partition of major variance request with a whole bunch of conditions. It was appealed on September 28th is when we received the appeal. And so there's a couple things. The appeal cited basically 6 different things. Those are in the staff report. I'm not going to read them. I don't think that's really necessary. But there was 6 different omissions that were cited. My staff report kind of lays out what the decisions that we made were based on, which were the relevant criteria in the Keizer Development Code. Unfortunately, the items listed in the appeal, I don't have a great ability to reply to those since they don't directly correlate to specific review criteria. Give a little bit of an overview of the case, and I know you have all the information, but for the sake of the audience or for the people watching, the application was for a partition of one piece of property. It has a house and an accessory dwelling unit on it currently. The applicant wished to divide the property into 2 separate parcels. So one in the front, the remaining house would stay. The ADU in the back is to be split off, and a new house is proposed to be built on that new lot. It'll be accessed via a private access easement. So the applicant's proposal showed minimum lot sizes being met, relevant criteria of, the lot coverages and all of that. Those are regulated at building permits, so we don't look at buildings themselves, not new buildings at least, at the land division process. We primarily look at how properties gain their access, can they be served with utilities, and what those improvement requirements are. The Public Works Department reviewed it, the Keizer Fire District reviewed it. We sent out requests for comments to the neighbors within 250 feet of the property. That's what the code requires. We received several letters. We addressed that in the staff decision the best that we could for the comments and concerns. Many of the concerns that we received weren't specific to review criteria for a partitioning. The property is zoned residential single family. The RS zone allows for different housing types, single family, duplex, triplex, quadplex, cottage clusters, depending on lot sizes. In this case, since the second lot already has an ADU on it, the applicant wishes to retain that ADU. And so we have a condition in there that basically says, hey, you've got to build a house within a year of getting it platted. So that's kind of what we're requiring of them. Because there's an ADU on that lot, they'll actually be limited to only building a single family home. If the ADU were gone, then it would be based solely on what that lot size of the lot is. At 5,000 square feet, you can build a triplex in Keizer. At 7,000, you can build a quadplex or do cottage cluster, as many of you know, as we went through those text amendments over the last couple years. The other piece about this, and the reason this appeals before the Planning Commission, is that in addition to the partitioning request, which is generally just a staff level decision that then gets appealed to a hearings officer, with a major variance, that appeal comes to the Planning Commission for their consideration. And since this is a combined application, that's why this whole thing is before you all. In this case, the applicant requested a major variance to the setback from the edge of the access easement to the existing home. So in the Keizer Development Code, the setback requirement to the edge of an access easement is 5 feet. The access easement is 20 feet, so total of 25 feet from a property line to an existing home is what you would need to fit a access easement in without requesting any kind of a variance. The existing house, the way it's situated, there's not that much room, so the applicant requested a major variance to reduce that 5-foot setback requirement down to 2 feet. This is a little bit boring, but variances, the reason it's a major variance is it's greater than a 20% change to a quantified standard, because 20% of 5 is 1 foot. So anything more than a 1 foot reduction requires a major variance. So one of the things, the Keizer Fire District actually submitted comments in support of the major variance. There was some discussion in a pre-application conference about a minor or a major variance of, you could shrink the easement to a little bit narrower standard than 20 feet and only need a minor variance, or you could shrink the setback greater, but you'd get the wider access. And frankly, the fire district, they preferred a wider access and a setback. So that's kind of the crux of the request. As I said, the application was submitted. We went through the process. The staff decision was rendered. That's in your packet that does lay out all the criteria in the KDC. In addition, at your dais, there's 2 packets of information that we provided. We received a letter from Mr. Weckert this afternoon and from Mr. Lee this afternoon. And so there's 2 different letters, and they came in real late, but I had a brief chance to look at them. Mr. Weckert did raise several issues in his letter. He does cite some OARs and ORSs, which aren't within the purview of my development code. But a couple things I did want to point out in that letter. I know there was several references to rezoning the property, and we're not rezoning the property. It's a partition and a variance. So I just want to make sure that Planning Commission doesn't have confusion on that, because the zone is the zone, and there's no change to the zone proposed with this application. Yeah, I think with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or provide clarity if I can.
Commissioner Burson?
So Shane, I have a question. So when the ADU was put in, there was no requirement to have the 20-foot easement at that point?
No, an ADU doesn't get its own
require
driveway
that.
even. ADU doesn't require a driveway or anything, or parking. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Could you also, is this, which is?
The one with the picture on it is from the appellant. That's from Wendell.
Okay.
And the other one was emailed to us by Michael. Yeah,
So this is,
the applicant.
Yep, so this is from the applicant, the email, and the tree on the front is from the appellant.
thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Okay, so process-wise, City Attorney Johnson would be, if I understand correctly, to invite the applicant up first?
Correct. The applicant and anybody testifying on the applicant's behalf should come up.
Okay.
And the total time would be 15 minutes.
And who's got the timer on that? Shane does? Okay, and are we gonna get like a 1-minute indicator? Great, and so,
It beeps at 1 minute.
And the light turns yellow.
so just for the interest of timing, is there anybody that's gonna, I wanna ask right now, anybody that's gonna talk about this other than the applicant, have you all signed up in the back? If there's a desire to talk, do they need to sign up on a sign-up sheet? Or we'll offer you an opportunity. If you hear something that's
Right.
compelling, you'll have the opportunity to come back up. I really want to make sure, it's very important to this planning commission, that everybody gets the opportunity to be heard.
And Chair Lawyer, just for the folks that are testifying, the limit timer sits on the table. There, it like has a readout that tells you how much time. It kind of gives you a countdown. The light will go green. The light turns yellow at the 1 minute, which kind of gives you the indication of, okay, I got a minute to get wrapped up. And then it'll go red and it'll beep at you. So just to let you know, that's the lights in front of you. That's what they mean.
And Commissioner Grants just reminded me, when you come up, whether you're the applicant or anybody else testifying, when you come up, please state your name and your city of residence for the record. And I think that's all. We don't actually need address.
Right,
correct?
and I would add, Chair Lawyer, we do, for these quasi-judicial hearings, really request that you put in your address so you can get mailed. Otherwise, you will not get mailed the decision, because we don't know where to send it to. So,
And may I clarify on that? As long as they write it down and Dawn has it, they don't necessarily have to state it on the record.
no, and we don't have people state in public their address for security reasons. Just state your city of residence.
Thank you for
So-
allowing me to clarify. So
Yeah,
that being
that's-
said,
Yeah, so, but we would appreciate it and really urge you to put your address on there if you haven't already. We will take the people who have signed up first before people who haven't signed up.
that's right.
Okay.
Okay, so with that being said, it's 6:36, and I'd like to invite up Michael and Susie Lee as the applicant to provide their opening comments. And again, if you'd be kind enough to please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Good evening, my name is Michael Lei. I'm currently reside in Honolulu. This is not Susie, she's my tenant, Miss Logan Banker. She's volunteered to be here with me.
Okay, can you talk right into that microphone, please? And lean right into it.
And can you say your name again? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, let me start over.
No, I heard you, Michael. I'm sorry. I didn't hear your tenant's name. I apologize.
My name's Logan Banker.
Logan. okay,
Yep,
thank
I'm
you.
a tenant at 527 Dearborn.
Thank you. Please.
All right, so thank you the commission, planning commission. Sorry, this is my first public hearing. And the planning director, Dina, the city attorney, for having me here today. I'm just a quick history. I bought this property back in 2019, winter of 2019. And I rented it to Mrs. Logan Banker Everson. Okay, she's the only tenant that I have on that front house. Since I have the ADU, it was a garage, I converted to an ADU. I also have another tenant in the back. And I used to live in Salem, Oregon, back in so long ago. My firstborn was born in Salem Hospital. I used to work for US Bank in Portland, and I commute every day from Salem, But since we moved to Hawaii, and we always going back and forth because we still have family here. My wife, Susie, is not here, but she graduated from Salem High. South Salem. Anyway, the reason why I bought the house on Dearborn because it was an investment. I have a small family. I put them through college, all three kids. The first one already graduated. I still have two more that I'm supporting for college. And, with the help of Mrs. Banker, who rented the property from me, I used that rental income, for family expenses. I had always have a plan to build a second home in the back of the lot. And that was something that I informed Ms. Banker when she applied to rent. So she knew it up front that, one day I'm going to build another home in the back of the lot. And that day is now. That's why I applied to petition the lot and, put in the application to, build a second home. Now, in the handout, it showed that there's an ADU in the back of the front house, but that is something, actually it was suggested by my designer, that, I should like maximize the use of the property, but that's not my intention. I just want to let the panel know, okay? It was just a little drawing that I put in there just in case. But the real plan is to build a second home once the lot is partitioned into two. Okay, so that is what my intention to do. I intend to be in compliance with all the conditions that's set forth in the pre-approval. I have began to talk to a civil engineer. I know what, I have a better understanding of what the requirements are. I was the person that drew that site plan in the application. I just, look around, do some Googling, and I say, okay, this is something that I can do myself. I can, so I put that in. So I did some research. So things like, if you saw on the site plan, I put the dry well and whatnot. That was to the best of my knowledge, but I believe that is not to city code, that I might have to put in a so-called infiltration trench. So I intend to follow that, okay, whatever the condition that's set forth in the pre-approval. So bottom line here is that I own this property as an investment. I look forward to, build a second home on it, and, provide additional income for my family. Okay, that's the truth. No more, no less. So with that, I'd like to turn over to Mrs. Banker.
Right.
You can move the mic closer.
Okay, perfect. I kind of wrote mine down because sometimes I'll forget to say things. So don't mind me, I'll just read it from my phone. Okay, so as you know, my name is Logan. My fiance and I currently live at 527 Dearborn Avenue, along with our two daughters who attend McNary. We've lived on Dearborn since December of 2019. I came today to speak highly of Michael Lee and his plans to add another unit to the property. I most definitely understand how our fellow neighbors have concerns about the construction process, and we were all affected by this just a few years back. We all know that nobody likes construction. During the previous construction, Michael and Susie were extremely understanding and practically catered to our concerns. It made the process easier with having the reinsurance from our landlords. Since the construction, Michael and Susie have worked really hard on making sure whoever lives at 525 Dearborn Avenue are responsible, kind, and they fit our vibes. Here in Keizer, finding a place to rent can be extremely difficult, especially for younger couples like us. Michael and Susie keep their rent within an affordable range and have accommodated the younger generations moving to the Keizer area. They really are great landlords who build relationships with their tenants. Again, I understand the concerns about constructions and the potential noise. I believe the new unit would be beneficial to another family like ours, and the outcome definitely outweighs the burden. We look forward to the completed new unit, and we are excited to meet our newest neighbors when that time comes.
All right, Mr. Lee, you had mentioned that you had a couple people that might be speaking on your behalf. Is there anybody else here? I think your time is getting super close. I don't know.
No.
Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to offer for the record before we ask questions?
No.
Okay. So we're okay if the commissioners have questions,
Sure.
Mr. Lee, to go ahead and open it now. Are we waiting on Shane or?
No.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Lee or Ms. Baker?
My question, I went through the package, there were a bunch of conditions. And you intend to comply with all of those conditions the city is imposing?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lee, I just want to clarify for the record, you'd made a comment that you drew up the plans for the site plan. Is this document specifically what you're talking about?
Yes, I drew that.
So this is a product that you produced?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what I'm talking about here. For some reason, I was expecting something in pencil, so this is very nice. All right, any other questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, hearing none. Dawn, do we have anybody signed up that wants to, I'm assuming that, and I'm going to say it wrong, I just had it in my hand. Mr. Weckert is going to want to speak. Mr. Weckert, do you want to go first, or do you want to hear from other people? I mean, actually, we're going to go in order to sign up, right? No one signed up. Okay, so Mr. Weckert, you're the appellant. I'd like to invite you up if you like to come and speak to the Planning Commission. Mr. Lee, Ms. Baker, thank you so much. You will have the opportunity for rebuttal at the end. Mr. Weckert, if you'd like, please come on up. And thank you for being here this evening. I know it's been a little bit of a process getting this time, but thank you for being here tonight, sir. And if you would, as I mentioned before, please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Is this live?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And just a reminder, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. There are two other people here that may have wanted to speak.
Okay.
Did they have to be on the list?
Nope, we'll invite them up.
So I can speak for my 5 minutes and then they will have their time?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I was born in Salem. I lived in the house for 70, well, I'm 70 years. I don't live there all the time. I'm in Tualatin half the time. That's where I worked. I'm retired now, trying to get back to Keizer. The experiences I've had with Shane have been fine. There's no sparks here. The issues I have with the petitions or whatnot, it's not been the same experience with Michael that Logan has had. Initially, the first couple of months, everything was fine. We have separate opinions on where his property line is and where mine is, who has access to the trees and the features on my property, and what he expects of me in relation to his property. So the relationship has deteriorated. I've lost one tree already. Different set of circumstances, but it's the loss of one of the line trees, or trees hanging over the line. It will cost me about $50,000 for every one of those trees that gets lost. There are maybe a dozen trees along the line there. That's going to add up to a very expensive experience on my part. The cooperation I'm getting from Michael has been adversarial. He doesn't care about the trees. He doesn't care the impact that his construction will have on those trees. They are defined legally as line trees. He owns a little bit of them, and I own a little bit of them. There are a couple trees that are mostly mine and a tree that's mostly his. So it's a mixed arrangement, but I have to protect those trees. I've always done good in law. I'm a retired accountant. Facts and technicalities are not that much of a burden. My attorneys tell me I've got nothing to worry about. I'm on the law is on my side. There are two bodies of law that most people don't get into unless they're into timber or Christmas tree or some other specialty field. One pertains to line trees and the other pertains to timber trespass. Michael has hired arborists to go on my property and cut my trees. That's illegal. He's done it in a manner that is not complimentary to him or his family, who basically lied to the arborists, telling them that I had given permission to do this and I had not. If you have my packet, you have all these incidents and a full track. I don't really want to repeat all of them. My hope for this meeting was Shane has certain organizational responsibilities and roles to play, as do each of you, as do I. My expectation was to come to this meeting, go through the process, advance it to the city council. They would go through their process. Everybody in this room is limited in the authority they have to go too deeply into this from a technical, legal standpoint. These criteria that you've identified to me, if I have no problems with the criteria, then we have no problems here tonight. My intent is to escalate it one level. The city attorney said that if I don't identify them, though, we can't escalate it. So any of these topics, any of these 15 topics that I want to advance in the process, I guess I have to read them or mention them.
Sir, if you go
I'm
ahead
out
and
of
please
time.
wrap up. We are at your 5 minutes.
So that's what I'm asking, is that somehow we authorize the advancement of this through the chain to get it to a level where they can actually deal with something that is not a checklist criteria, but more of a humanistic approach to the problem. So I think I had 2 people that expressed they wanted to speak.
Great. Since I've got nobody actually signed up, first I'd like to really take a moment and appreciate you coming forward and providing your comments on this project. Mr. Weckert, thank you. I appreciate you being here. So since we have nobody signed up and there's no other specific interested parties, what I would like to do is take this opportunity first to the Planning Commission. If you have any questions for Mr. Weckert, we'll address those questions first, and then we'll move on to anybody. So audience, please listen if there's something that comes up, if there's a theme you want to talk about, listen to the questions the commissioners may have for Mr. Weckert, and then we'll go on.
I assume I cannot use one of these other people's time?
I don't believe that's the case. And so, but the commissioners may have some questions for you, Mr. Weckert, so if you can just hang out for just a moment. Commissioner Grants.
Yes, Mr. Weckert, thank you for coming tonight and participating. I do have a couple of questions. You mentioned that there's a property line dispute. I don't know how.
We know where the surveyors have put the property line.
Okay, so.
The issue is trees are not like kids or dogs. You can't call them home. They are there. And if they go over the line, their roots or limbs go over the line, Oregon law gives them certain rights and privileges, protections. I should not be in fear of losing these trees. When this house is built, when they excavate or even pour a concrete slab, the experience on this first tree is it'll kill it.
And Mr. Lee also has his own property rights and rights to the tree.
True.
Right?
True.
Okay. So the property has been surveyed. There is no dispute on where that property line
None
is,
whatsoever.
correct? Okay, so it's just where the trees are and whose ownership of the trees?
No, we don't even disagree on that.
Okay.
It's a issue of what value I place on them. I planted them. They were 1959 Oregon Centennial. They mean something to me. It's not just board feet or something. The laws in Hawaii are different than the laws in Oregon. Mr. Lee is looking at the tree situation legally from a Hawaiian standpoint. I'm looking at it from an Oregon standpoint. In Oregon, I'm safe. In Hawaii, those trees are worthless. And that's where my attorney is telling me that I've got nothing to worry about. Yeah, I can sue him afterwards. I can get the damages. I can recover whatever the values we can put on it for board feet, for shrub screening value, aesthetics, for emotional loss. those can become very expensive trees. And if he sells the property, then I got to go to war with whoever he sells it to, and I don't want that. I don't want this conflict. The only way to avoid the conflict is to keep the land not zoned, but in the same use that it has always been. Because under that circumstance, that's not a home site, that is a agricultural site. Not agriculture in a farm sense, pigs, chickens, and corn, but in the sense that it was never intended to be a building site.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Weckert? I don't either. Mr. Weckert, thank you again for being here this evening. I do value your time and appreciate your willingness to come and talk to this matter.
Thank you.
With that being said, I'd like to open the opportunity if there's anybody else in the audience. I believe that, yes, ma'am, please come forward, and if you would be so kind to state your name and city of residence for the record. And then when you conclude with your testimony, after the commissioners have any questions, would you be kind enough to see Dawn to make sure you get your address?
My name is Pat Ozena-LeMay. I live at 507 Dearborn, immediately adjacent to the property in question.
Okay.
Coming up in February, I will be starting my 25th year there. I have the emotional appeal that nobody else has, except for Wally and my friend Charlotte, who lives next to me. My way of life is going to be changed when that property is changed. I bought that property as my forever home. When people in the commission are granting or denying variances, division of property, it cannot, should not be based solely on numbers of square footage available to the property. I have put up for 3 years of partying from the neighbors next door, and it makes me very uncomfortable that that person is here. I have been told that if the second building were to be done, that they would consider moving. So what I hear to my own ears and here are very different. Partying should not go on till 2:30 a.m. And if you call the police, they will say, you have to identify yourself or we cannot guarantee somebody coming out there. I did not identify myself because of fear of retribution. Think about putting the different units on there, how much road traffic that is. I have heard people drag their garbage things out at 2:20 in the morning. I have heard it as late as 9:20 in the evening when I've just got in bed. I have a developed third of an acre that is my personal sanctuary and oasis that I work diligently to have for my sense of my little piece of paradise here in Keizer. Once that building starts, I no longer have that piece. So while the Lees get to do anything they want with their property according to the standard measurement guidance, I have no way to protect my life. I cannot put a sound barrier dome over the top. The other thing I wanted to say was thank you to Mr. Burson for going by the property today, but I don't know how you can adequately look at a map while literally driving, because I'm a literal person. I don't think that you could understand all of the dimensions and what's going on and how tiny and crowded it will be. And if anybody else should drive by there, consider the width of that entrance and consider what you're doing to the sidewalks that may or will come in the front. I think of things like, how do you put, with 4 possible homes in there, because that's what we looked at, how do you put 3 garbage cans for all of that out on the front? It's just little logistics nobody thinks about on a planning commission. You're doing the paperwork and by the numbers, but I'm begging you to start considering some human elements. You're playing around with people's past, present, and future. Thank you for listening. I feel like it's a foregone conclusion that this evening will have no impact on what's going on at that property. We had a long discussion about this and several different people, and please, think about that human condition and not just grant permission based on numbers of square footage. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. If you please stay for just one moment, if any commissioners have any questions?
Yep.
No? Okay, thank you again for your time, and please see Dawn so she can get your information for the record. Okay, is there anybody else that wishes to speak before I invite the applicant back up? I want to make it very clear that this is it. I want it to be very clear this is your opportunity. If you want to provide comment on this application, this is it. Sir, please come forward. And if you would, please state your name and city of residence for the record. And as I mentioned before, please go see Dawn afterwards to make sure she gets your information.
My name is Stephen Kalb. I'm a resident of Keizer. My property abuts the concerned property on the north. One of my concerns is with 4 living units being proposed on that property, and the fact that no parking is allowed in the easement areas or the turnaround areas, according to city code, although it isn't clear who enforces that situation. I've dealt with that with an easement on the north side of my property with people in, my property is the superior property, in parking in the easement on a regular basis, having to knock on their door to be able to access my property. My property does not have a house on it, but it's my backyard. I'm concerned with the number of automobiles that might be associated with those homes on the property. There is no parking, as far as I know, legally on Dearborn. So that, and the fact that there's a bus stop on River Road is inconsequential at this point for transportation. People don't typically ride the bus. They're going to have cars, and they're going to be parking those cars possibly in the neighborhoods on the streets that might have parking. So we're pushing parking, this is possible, pushing parking into other areas in the neighborhood. So property is impacted by these sorts of developments, maybe in ways that aren't really addressed by the city codes, but it's something that the Planning Commission should be aware of and cognizant that there are impacts. And of course, although our house is not immediately adjacent to Michael's property, we could hear people when these people first moved into the rental house. I agree with the other lady that we heard screaming inside our house 100 feet away for about 2 years until it finally stopped. So there are impacts to other people in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, any questions? All right, if you would be so kind, please go see Dawn so she makes sure to get your information. All right, last call. All right, Mr. Lee and Ms. Baker, you're welcome to come back up. Just a reminder, you will have 10 minutes for any rebuttal. Thank you. And we've already got your name and city of residence for the record, so I don't think we need it again, correct? And so you'll, as I said, you'll have 10 minutes, the green light, yellow light, red light. This is your opportunity to provide any rebuttal. Go ahead, please, sir.
My name is Michael Lei, and I am the applicant. I reside in Honolulu, and I am the owner of that 527 Dearborn property. First, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Wecker, Pat, and Steve for providing their testimonies. I wrote down a couple notes, and I would like to address their concerns. The relationship, let me just say one thing, and this is, coming from my heart, okay? When I first bought that property, and up until now, one of the things that I talked to my wife about is, okay, one day we're gonna go and live in this ADU. And that's why I built that ADU. And I wanted to be good neighbors to everyone around. I made myself, make a point to meet Steve, my back neighbor. I talk to him whenever I have a chance to come here to visit, check out my tenants. I think I have a pretty good relationship with Steve. I do share his concerns, so thank you. I also try to be good neighbors to Pat and also Mr. Weckert from the beginning, even though there were incidents about his trees. Like you say, it become more adversarial over times. Okay, as recent as, I try to trim the branches on his trees. That is after I already asked and notified him that I'm going to trim the branches. Now, with regard to, I think, I barely heard what he said, but I think he was saying something about the concrete slab might have killed one of his trees. Well, I had an arborist came out and look at the trees. He told me, well, I look at the concrete slab myself. I was there several times. The concrete slab was built above the ground, using 2x4 because it's only like 2 inches thick, 2 or 3 inches thick. So there was no digging into the ground that would, damage the tree. With regard to the site plan, that how I drew, again, even though it showed a smaller ADU in the back of the front house, that is not my intention. My intention is really to build the second home of the second parcel as I drew in the plan, okay? So with the condition that the planning director put together, and after talking to the fire department, the city, my intention is to follow those code, build a second home, a small home that is, meeting on those conditions, okay? The site plan, again, I drew that thing. I'm not a designer. I'm not, an architect. But I figured that, I can take it as far as I could so that I can get the pre-approval to move forward. And when, if I go forward, I'm already starting to talk to a civil engineer, a house designer, okay? And I'm gonna get professional help in building this thing, okay? I'm not gonna be like winging it. The other thing that I talked to the arborist when, he visited me on site just this past Sunday, is that we're gonna try to stay further away from the trees, okay? In the site plan, it showed 10 feet. The setback is only 5, but I drew 10, just, again, I have this hunch that we're gonna be living there one day. I'm not sure, but I always try to be a good neighbor. But after talking to the arborist, we're gonna try to move the house foundation further away from the trees. So it could be like 20 feet, not just 10, okay? I'm gonna have to make do with a smaller footprint of the house. So that is what I want to share with Mr. Weckert. I know that, his property is dearest to him, his trees. I do have respect for the trees, And I try to, if I'm going to build this house, I'm going to be as respectful as I could, to the trees. Like I say, I used to live here, and I know the people. Okay, it's not like I don't live here before. So trees are very important in Oregon. The other thing about the noises coming from the tenants, I'm sorry about that. If you do, to Pat and Steve, if you do hear noises like coming from my property, please let me know. You have my contact information, you have my phone number. I already talked to my tenants about the noises. There are guidelines in the rental agreement that they need to, follow. Okay, so the communication line is there. I already talked to my tenants about the noises. I do respect my neighbors, of their sanctuary, their peace. And so I plan to, work with everyone to have a good neighborly environment. Okay. So, with that, again, I thank you, the panel, for listening to me, for having this hearing, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Commissioners, questions for Mr. Lee? Commissioner Burson?
So, I believe both of the folks that come up and talked about this, they talked about 4 units. And I'm counting 3, so where's the 4th at?
Yeah, so the front house, which is the main property, the original, the ADU is 2, and the third one is the one that I plan to build.
But there's not a 4th?
There's no 4th.
Okay, thank
Even
you.
though the site plan show the small ADU, so in the front lot, that's not my intention.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have a,
Maybe Shane can explain.
Mr. Witham, can you explain that, please?
The decision shows the house, the ADU, and the proposed new house. I think that the 4 was in the request for comments sent out initially
From whom?
from the city of Keizer.
Understood, okay.
What is the ADU used currently for? What is it?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that,
ADU.
please?
There is ADU currently, right?
Yeah.
Is it rented,
what's
the current, the other
what's the
ADU?
What's,
Yes, it is currently rented. Yeah. I just want to add, I talked to my civil engineer, who's going to help me with the plan. Okay, he mentioned that there is enough room for on-site parking. Okay, even with the turnaround, so there'll be, no off-street parking or the parking on the Dearborn Street.
Commissioner Lopez?
Just for my understanding of this, you're not proposing or setting aside any parking, designated parking for the ADU?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
There's a new proposed parking for 525. We are not proposing or planning on any parking for the ADU?
There will be in the design that I'm going to apply.
Not in the one that you,
not in the current?
not in the one you've drawn up? It's not there, right? Or am I missing it?
No,
It
it's
is
here.
there.
It's up in the.
It's in the site plan.
Yeah, I believe, if I'm reading this correctly, it does appear that it's just on the lower part, just here. It says proposed new parking for 525 Dearborn. But that actually would be the dwelling,
That,
right?
I
that
don't,
appears to be the existing
new
ADU,
dwelling.
if the address is correct.
Okay.
525 is the ADU address.
Got it.
Yeah.
527
The-
is
the
the
house-
original house.
Correct. The proposed house doesn't have an address yet.
That's right, yeah.
And so that parking showing at the end of the access is for the existing ADU.
So it would be new parking for the ADU.
That's proposed, I'm sorry, you're right. It says proposed new parking. They would add that there. The parking for the new house is shown, would be the driveway area.
It'd just be that right above the proposed new turnaround?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Did I answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, just on the drawing, I was getting a little confused, right? Because it doesn't look like there was much or any proposed parking for the new home. For
Okay,
527.
so if you look at the footprint for the proposed single-family dwelling, there's kind of like faint dash line. That's represent the
Right, it
parking
just
for
in the
the-
visual, it just wasn't
Yeah,
clicking.
yeah.
So thank you.
A novice designer here.
This is great. Like you said, I was expecting a drawing. I was expecting a napkin and a pencil, so this
I
is.
saw that. I saw that on one of the applicants.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Lee? Nope. Mr. Lee, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so process-wise, City Attorney Johnson, we can ask questions related to this while we're still under public hearing, specifically to the applicable substantive criteria to either you or Shane or Dina. And then, once we're done with any questions, we can close the public hearing.
Correct. I usually advise the council and the planning commission to not close the hearing until you feel you're ready to make a motion.
Okay.
That way, if you have a question, the hearing is still open and you can ask staff questions after the hearing is closed, but you can't call anybody else up once you close the hearing. So if in your discussion before your motion, a question comes up for one of the participants, you can ask them if they would want to address that question.
Okay.
So when you're to the stage where you feel that you have your questions answered, the chair should check with the rest of the commission, and if that's the case, then at that time you can close the hearing.
Thank you. Process-wise, what happens here? So So what happens here, and is there any subsequent steps?
Right, so and I think it's laid out in the staff report, but I'll reiterate it for the audience too. At the close of the hearing, if the commission feels that the applicant has met their burden with regard to the criteria, and you feel that it should be approved, and you don't see anything that you need to change in the staff decision, we've provided a draft order.
Okay.
And so at that point, in that hypothetical, the motion would be to move that the commission adopt that order that's attached as part of the packet. If, on the other hand, the majority of the commission feel that one or more criteria have not been met, then we would request that you direct staff on what criteria has not been met and why, and we would come back at a subsequent meeting for the commission to actually vote on the final order.
Okay.
So in either case, you should, unless for some reason you want to continue it, you have that right to either continue the hearing or continue deliberation. But if you're ready to make a motion one way or the other tonight, then you can do so. If you decide that the staff decision should stand, then the order's there and you would vote directly on that, and that would be the final vote of the commission.
Okay. And Mr. Weckert, in his testimony, made comment to the effect, and I'm going to paraphrase, but he'd like to see it come from this body to the city council. Is that procedurally accurate?
Yes, the appeal. So if the commission determines that the criteria, the applicable criteria have been met and determines that the appropriate order is prepared and you want to vote on that. And again, if you think all the criteria are met, but for some reason don't agree with some particular part of the staff decision,
okay,
you can tell us that and we would come back with a different order.
Great.
But back to your question on the council, Mr. Weckert or any of the other participants have a right to appeal this. The next appeal would go to the city council.
Great.
But I want to make sure everybody understands, it is not automatic. It is, the planning commission is the final determinant at this stage.
Right.
So unless appealed, it will not go to the council if it is not appealed.
Thank you for laying that out, Mr. Johnson. Commissioners, is there any questions of staff at this time? Commissioner Burson?
So I just want to be clear, we're actually talking about both the partitioning and the major variance.
That is
in this
correct.
motion.
Yes, that is
They're not
correct.
separate, we're not having a hearing on.
No, the decision is dependent on it. Without the major variance, there would not be legal
be a
means of
partition.
access, and there would have to be a condition that says tear off 3 feet of your house.
Thank you. All right.
Commissioner Grants, nothing? Commissioner Lopez? I'm going to come back to you. You good?
Yeah, please come back.
Okay, Commissioner Avishon?
No questions.
All right, Commissioner Lopez, it's your opportunity if you'd like to ask any additional questions of staff. If you're thinking on it, Shane, I have a question, and I heard from Mr. Lee a couple times that he intends to work with an engineer or some kind of specialist to develop a site plan. And in that, my guess is any deviation from the conditions set forth in the original determination, any determination made by the city would be that site plan would have to be exactly that, right? They can't stray from that, otherwise effectively it would.
So one thing to clarify, it's kind of interesting because the site plan has way more detail than we normally see with a partition.
Right.
We're only looking at the land division, not the future house that he may or may not build or what it looks like. I don't regulate that at this point. That's a building permit review. So one of the conditions that's in the report, and I appreciate Mr. Lee's willingness to comply with the conditions, but the reality is, Michael, is that you don't have a choice. The conditions are the conditions. They're in stone. So you meet the conditions or I don't sign the plat. That's just the reality. But that being said, one of the conditions, which actually comes from the Marion County Surveyor's Office, because they regulate the state process of platting new land, is that it has to be surveyed. It has to be engineered, it has to be monumented, it has to meet the provisions of ORS, I think it's 92.060 or something like that.
You got that for almost.
I know, I write it down a lot in reports. But so yeah, and the other thing is he said he'd started meeting with a civil engineer. That's great, because one of the conditions that our Public Works Department and city engineer have placed on this application is that you're gonna have to develop a drainage and grading plan. So a final one. In the preliminary stage of approval, it's more about, can this property comply with our standards? And then it gets into the nuts and bolts of, okay, now your engineer needs to design something that our city engineer will review and approve for where your stormwater is going to go. In this application, there's also frontage improvements that have to be designed and sidewalks installed. So yes, those requirements have to be met. And in the condition, it kind of spells out the when.
Yep.
And basically those conditions have to be met, designs have to be submitted, approved, permitted, and assured through things like an improvement agreement or other instrument that's acceptable to the city that guarantees those improvements get installed prior to the land legally being divided. Does that
No, that's really
help?
helpful. Thank you. Commissioner Burson?
So I have another question, Shane. You said if they build a house, but I thought earlier you said that there is a condition that the house will be built within a year.
Yes, there is. So
If we
the
approve
issue
it,
is
then the
this
house
is, yeah, so there has been times where folks get an approval and they never get it platted, and then the approval goes away. The approval's good for 2 years to get the process platted and actually create the lots. The condition we placed on this application, and it's a difficult one because, you know, technically, I suppose, I could have said, tear down the ADU if you want to divide your property. But in this case, we said, okay, if you build a house within a year of getting the plat recorded, that's better than tearing one house and then rebuilding something. So that's how the condition is written that we proposed.
So if we vote on something tonight, that condition is in there.
Yes. Yeah, the approval we've granted is what that is held to. But nothing with the approval guarantees that Mr. Lee follows through and gets it platted. I would think so. I mean, but that's going to be on him. And yeah.
Commissioner Grants? We got the wheels turning now.
I have
One moment, please.
question. Is it,
Mo,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Grants, and then we'll go to you.
Couple clarifying questions for my benefit as well as the benefit for everybody here in the audience. the condition about building a house within a year of recording the plat, what do you define as building? Is that pulling a building permit?
Let me look and see what the condition says. I think it says that it's supposed to be constructed.
Shane, and when you find that, can you cite that, please?
Yep. No, I got it. I think I will. Prior to final plat approval. Yeah, the condition is condition number 13. The new dwelling to be built on parcel 2 is required to be built within 1 year of the recording of the partition, or the ADU must be removed.
And which page is that on, please?
The agreement has to be signed before the plat.
I mean, is
Yes,
that
so
part of the
there's,
condition
so
or
there's,
related?
there's two conditions. Sorry. Can't read this one. Okay, so condition 9 is the agreement,
Which page are you looking at?
page 15 of the staff report.
Thank you.
So condition 9, an improvement agreement or other instrument acceptable to the city should be executed ensuring the construction of a new home on parcel 2 or removal of the ADU within 1 year recording the partition plat. All recording fees should be the responsibility of the applicant. And then condition 13, prior to obtaining building permits, it says the dwelling to be built on parcel 2 is required to be built within 1 year of the recording of the partition, or the ADU must be removed. So ultimately, they enter into an agreement, and if they don't follow through with the agreement, they get rid of the ADU. That's what the conditions read. And the reason being, just so to be clear, the ADU that's on the property was an existing outbuilding. They went through building permits, I think in 2020, maybe. It was a few years ago. And they converted that over to an accessory dwelling unit, which is allowable in our city code. And as some of you were on commission when those rules got changed by the state, and then we had to revisit ADU standards 3 times. So they did a conversion, which since the building was there, it can be there. If that ADU building was set back further from the property line, for example, it had the required rear yard setback of a single-family home, then they could just partition it, it could sit on a lot. But in this case, the ADU does not meet the setback requirements of a single-family home, so it can't stay there unless it's an ADU. And an ADU, by definition, is secondary and subservient to a primary single-family dwelling. So that's kind of how we wrote those conditions. Is that?
Yeah, that actually feeds right into my second question, which is the 1 year delay in demolishing the ADU if the primary structure is not constructed. You've made that provision on previous partitions and or subdivisions. This is not a one-off specifically for Mr. Lee, is it?
No, well, I will say we've never had one with an ADU because ADUs are fairly new. We've done it several times for accessory buildings.
Okay.
I don't think we've ever done, I can't think of an example where there was actually an ADU, but yes, we have done that several times. Recent subdivision that we approved, there was an outbuilding, and oftentimes an outbuilding's in a backyard in the area they want to divide. The outbuilding's already there, so they want to keep the outbuilding. So we give them some time to establish the primary use, because an outbuilding is the same as an ADU in that it's secondary and subservient to a primary use of the property, which in this case would be a dwelling. Like, for example, you can't just have a lot in Keizer and just throw a shop on it. That's not an allowed use in the residential zone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But the ADU is not going away, though. It's
Right.
not being demolished, yeah. The question I have, is it quite possible that engineering drawings come and say, well, these are actually not even accurate drawings? Somebody, banker's desk drawn drawers, they're not even survey lines and this and that, they don't even match these drawings, and that could, should we not ask for engineering drawing first?
At the time of an application, you mean?
Yeah.
We
Especially something complicated as this, right?
Yeah, we condition approvals for the engineer drawings.
Right.
So generally when there's, that's something that our code does not require that level of detail at the time of an application because it's a preliminary approval. So it's not finally approved until the plat is actually recorded. So, Mr. Lee would have a piece of paper if no appeal happened, he would have a piece of paper in his hand that says, yes, I can divide my property as long as I meet all these conditions. That's when he would go and get all the engineering drawings, have the survey finalized and all of those things. So I mean, it would be a huge expense for applicants, property owners, to front for a one lot partition.
And before approval.
Yeah.
So that's why it's done in that order, is the approval comes first from the deciding body, but with all those conditions, and at that time, the applicant knows that he has an approval if it's not appealed, and can then feel safe expending those costs.
Just my clarification, once you asked the question, was that just, I wanted clarification about the willingness to,
Oh, right.
so I'm good. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lopez.
Asked it a lot better than I could have.
And then the private access easement. This is owned solely by the owner of the property. The city has no responsibility or anything with regards to any maintenance of this whatsoever, right? So any maintenance on this from now until they rip it up and replace it with something new is entirely on the people that own that. Is that an accurate statement?
That is correct. There's a condition, I'm trying to find it really quick.
So it's not being adopted into the city's street program?
Correct,
No, no.
correct. Yeah, so condition number 4 on page 15, provisions for the maintenance of the access easement, fencing, hedge along the access easement, address display signage, and no parking signs are provided in the form of a maintenance agreement, homeowners association, or other instrument provided to the Keizer Planning Department for review and approval.
Right.
So with the private access easement, generally, you're absolutely correct. It will be owned by the two lots essentially, and they'll grant each other easement rights to pass over it. They'll have a document that gets recorded along with the plat, or there'll be language right on the plat that says who has the rights to use it.
Right.
We require a maintenance agreement ensuring that somebody's maintaining it. It is a private agreement. We don't enforce them. We don't do anything with them. However, we do have language in them that says you can't get rid of it without our permission.
Right.
The other thing I did want to speak to, because there was testimony about the no parking, and I don't know when your access easement was created or how long ago that was. I've worked here for a real long time, and I've had a few different jobs, and we used to have a lot of problems with access easements and no parking not being able to be enforced. But several years ago, I pushed real hard, and our code enforcement department pushed to say, hey, we need to be able to write parking tickets if somebody's parking in an access easement, because it's violating the fire code, but the fire district doesn't really write tickets. And so we actually, when access easements have appropriate no parking signs, if somebody's parking in an area on an access easement, even if it's private, even if it's not a public street, we actually go out and talk to them, and we'll give them warnings, we'll give them tickets. We could theoretically tow them if we needed to.
Right.
So that is, as far as who's going to enforce the no parking, we don't patrol that. We don't have the staff resources to do that. Parking in general is not the highest priority of our police department or my code enforcement officer, but we do respond to those complaints when they come in. So that is one thing that we are able to do. The city is able to enforce that, just to clarify, because I know that was brought up.
And I just want to speak to one of the comments in here that dealt with water runoff. And I think that there's a condition in here specifically under the stormwater runoff and for the new development. And so this applies generally to the whole property, but also to the private access easement. And so part of that maintenance is if there's excess water runoff from that private access easement, then it becomes a code enforcement issue, right? And so that's where they need to come in and probably.
It could.
Right.
It gets a little bit different. There is some Oregon drainage law things that we've gotten involved with just because we've had to at times.
Yep.
But generally, that is correct. The city engineer provided comments on this application, the Public Works Department. I'm not a drainage expert. I'm definitely not an engineer. I'm not good at math, whatever. But the condition is very clear that the applicant is responsible to come up with a drainage plan. They'll have to do calculations based on the impervious surface that's being created, which includes roofs, paved areas, parking areas, the access easement, and they have to keep that water on site.
Right.
Because they're gonna have to manage their own stormwater. You can't put it onto somebody else's property. You can't put it into a public system, because frankly, there's not a public system there.
Right.
And with the rules that the city as a whole is under for DEQ, we're not supposed to put more water into our existing systems. So that is a condition that they will have to, Mr. Lee's engineer will have to figure out how to do that.
Great. Thank you for the comment on that. I just wanted to speak to that since that was one among many comments that was in there, so. All right. Any additional questions? Anything else we need to address with either Shane or City Attorney Johnson? All right. Commissioners, are we at a point where we feel like we can close this public hearing and make a motion? You need dissent? No? Okay, so it is 7:35, and I'm going to close the public hearing on the application of Michael and Susie Lee for a petition of major variance on property located at 527 Dearborn Avenue, North Keizer, Oregon, case number 2023-12. Public hearing is closed. All right, do we have a motion to consider? Commissioner Grants.
I move the Planning Commission adopt the order in the matter of the application of Michael and Susie Lee for a partition and major variance on property located at 527 Dearborn Avenue in Keizer, case number 2023-12.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Grants and a second by Commissioner Avishon to adopt the order in the matter of the application of Michael and Susie Lee for a petition and major variance on property located at 527 Dearborn Avenue, North Keizer, Oregon, case number 2023-12. Is there any discussion on the motion before us, Commissioners? You know, I just want to say that I think that, I really appreciate the applicant being here and the appellant being here. This is really tough, and I think that this is tough for a variety of reasons. And I think that this all boils down to a lot of decisions that have been made completely outside of this building. There have been a lot of state laws that have come in that frankly have tied the hands not only of staff and our city council, but also this planning commission. And those things have happened completely outside the auspices of what we are allowed to do. These are rules and laws that have come in. And it is fundamentally, in my opinion, changing the look and feel of our city in some areas. And so most of the issues discussed tonight, unfortunately, just were largely civil and or enforcement related issues, which makes participating kind of tough. But I just want to say thank you very much to everybody being here. I express some of the same concerns. We've seen development happening throughout the whole city, but we are bound by what the law says that we are required to do. And I think that the work being done by Dina and Shannon, our city attorney, speaks to that law. And so because of that, I'll be voting in support of this, despite the way I actually feel about this, because this is not an issue about emotions. This is an issue about the applicable substantive criteria of what the development code says. And I think that staff did a fantastic job on this. Commissioner Burson.
So I do want to appreciate the applicant and the respondent coming in here, because I actually think that you two hearing each other and the concerns in the neighborhood will help with this development, because you seem to be caring of your neighbors, and you've heard their concerns. And so I think the process itself was beneficial for at least to get two of you in the room. And, you know, I'm upset about this and I want this. And when this development comes about, you'll have that in the back of your mind on how can we mitigate some of those concerns that you have from your immediate neighbors around there. So I appreciate you, everybody being here, but I appreciate the applicant coming in so that you can hear firsthand what those concerns are, that one neighbor has concerns that those trees continue to live on. He planted them and he wanted to keep them living on. And you have another neighbor that's concerned about tranquility in their area. So I appreciate everybody being here and kind of vetting that out in public. So thank you very much.
Commissioners, anything else? All right, all those in favor, oh, Commissioner Grants, please.
Yeah, just real quick, I want to make sure everybody knows, I read the full staff report. I looked at each of the relevant criteria. I thought about each of them thoroughly. I didn't hear anything tonight that spoke to the relevant criteria. So the staff report holds, and it was great.
I just want to, that although we empathize, the appellant, we understand your complaints, your situation, but at the same time, it is very hard for us to make a decision, but we have to go with what the code, what the city, what the law says. But that doesn't mean that we don't understand the tranquility and all those questions. So hopefully, you all will work it out.
And I just want to echo Commissioner Burson's comment. Mr. Lee, please be a good neighbor. These people deserve it. It's my opinion. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously with one absent. And Mr. Witters was here.
Two absent,
Oh,
Madam Chair.
as I was.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Two absent. Okay. Well, I think that concludes our business for this evening. Actually, Commissioners, is there any major desire to come and hang out with these wonderful people in December? Hearing none, would you like a motion to cancel the December meeting?
You can do it by consensus, Mr. Chair, so if there's no objection.
Mr. Witters, do you really want to meet in December? I know you're not here, but you're here. All right, well, we will cancel the December meeting. Shane, Deanna, thank you all for your great work. Shannon, thank you. Don, thank you. Commissioners, thank you all. We are adjourned at 7:41.
Have great holidays.